Hi, everyone, and welcome y bienvenidos to Presently Aquí. My name is Claudia, and I will be your host. For those of us joining us for the first time, I created Presently Aquí to serve as a platform for my Latino community and friends to discover for the first time or dive deeper into your mindfulness journey. I truly believe that mindfulness is such an instrumental part of our mental health. It's a tool that will help you navigate your everyday worries to help and even alleviate that lingering anxiety from the current pandemic. Additionally, it allows us to stay in the present moment more often, and that's where the magic lies. By understanding ourselves better, we create this awareness inside that becomes the first step and foundation to self love. And always, if this is your first time, for those of us that joined us before, you know that I like to take a moment to ask all of you how you're feeling right now in this moment. In the spectrum of happy to sad, I just want you to know that it's okay where you stand and that you are enough and that you are loved. So I am so happy to present. I'm so happy and excited to present to all of you this new monthly series of webinars in which I will be hosting with two admirable Latina women, which I will shortly introduce to you. And we will be having a brief discussion on mindful parenting every month. And a quick reminder to all of you that this is an interactive live session, so please join in on the conversation. And without further ado, my first guest is Danielle Brunson. If you've been watching Presently Aquí, she was in our holiday webinar, and I'm so happy to be collaborating with her again. Danielle is a yoga teacher, mindfulness and meditation expert, public school leader, and educator. She is the co-founder of the Namaste Project, which you can follow her on Instagram. Yay, welcome Danielle, welcome back.
Hey, it's so nice to be back. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about mindful parenting and just to see you again, as always.
Peace. I love having you. I was so happy to have you back and have this important conversation. So I'm going to introduce the second guest. So I'm not sure if some of you remember Sam Pearson. I've hosted him twice in my past webinars. And I like to introduce you all to the woman who I'm sure has inspired his success, because no king is not without his queen. And I want to introduce you to Cynthia Pearson. And Cynthia is a career victims' right advocate that has spent 12 years in the court system supporting trauma victims and developing trauma-informed programs. Yay, I'm so happy to introduce Cynthia. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Of course. Oh my God, this is such an exciting day. I never thought that I would be having this conversation, and not only the conversation, but with both of you, because this is such an important topic, as you know, we've talked about between the three of us, and this is something you're passionate about, something I'm definitely passionate about. I used to teach kids yoga, so this is so important. So I'm gonna let you ladies take it away and introduce this wonderful mindful parenting workshop that you both are working with.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Just a little bit of a background. Danielle and I have been working in the trauma-informed space and mindfulness space for quite some time, and we're both moms. And one of the things that we found as like a commonality with all the things that we were teaching is that there was a space of parenting that really hadn't, been addressed in all of the areas that we were touching, whether it was in the K through 12 and the education systems, or with organizations that were involved with the community for court-involved youth. And we thought, these practices, these methodologies work best if they are incorporated in the home environment. And so we came together and curated a special course on mindful parenting that is easy to digest, has a lot of materials that are helpful to grasp some of these concepts, but then a lot of downloadable items and tools and giveaways for parents so that they can have something to take home every night, that they're with us, and that as they progress through the course, they're going to find a better relationship with their children.
I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, I work with public schools in this area, and I kept getting that from schools. They were like, well, we want to get the families involved. We want to get the parents involved. So just like Cynthia said, it just kept coming up and coming up. And Claudia, I'm like, the universe is telling me that we need to support parents more.
Yes.
And people were just asking, and I would have teachers who would ask, like a principal I'm working with now, she's like, what can I do at home? So even though they're learning it, some people in other areas where Cynthia and I might be working with them, they were still like, how do I transition that over into my home life, you know? So it's just such a great space to be in.
It really is. I'm really excited. At some point, I'm sure there's a lot of parents that reached out to me regarding this, like, oh my God, yes, we need this. And so I'm really happy to have both of you lead it. And this is just such an important aspect in our Latino community, right? I know everyone else can use it, but we come from all these old traditions and bad habits of gaslighting and trauma behavior, even hitting, right? Hitting, our parents would hit us, and at the time it was normal, but as we're growing and healing, we're seeing that that's not the best way to go about it. What can people expect when they do sign up for these workshops that you're and when is it?
So we're starting off first on March 7th. So anyone who's interested can go to mindfulparentingprogram.com, and it will guide you through the course outline. And what we're wanting to do and how we wanted to frame it was to sort of ground it in an understanding that all of us were once children and all of us have experiences of being parented in many different ways. And so we're going to kick it off by having a discussion around trauma, around adverse childhood experiences, and how we were parented, and then moving it on into an area where we believe is really important, which is self-care, and that the parent, first and foremost, must be aware of different tools and methods that help them feel that they are worthy of the time for self-care. And then ultimately go into mindfulness tools and practices that Danielle is an expert at. And so every session will be content driven, but it will be open for discussions. We want to have engagement with parents so we can talk about, what happened probably the night before, or maybe what happened last week. So we can really dive into those pieces and help navigate some solutions. So we're really looking forward to having a cohort, if you will, of parents that are going to build community within themselves, but then also carry that for others in their communities at home.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. At some point, you affect your community, and as you start changing, so will everyone around you. So I'm really happy about that. And I like that you're offering services like, what happened the day before. So they have a way to contact you during the workshop as they're going through the motions, which is really helpful, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow when you have children. It's so unpredictable right? Their patterns and whatever they're feeling, also their people. So they have their own feelings and thoughts. And I'm really happy that this is happening. And how often throughout the year are you offering these workshops?
So right now the first session is going to be for 4 weeks starting on March 7th. And then we're going to take on another cohort towards the end of April, or towards the middle part of April. So if right now is not an ideal time, please as well go into our website, because we're going to have an area for you to stay connected with us. And also we have Facebook groups, and we're connected on Instagram and other social media platforms where we're going to continue to provide some content for parents. And we worked really hard with some grant funding and things of that nature to make this course affordable. And so that's something that we really wanted to be able to have a focus on, which is accessibility. Like you mentioned, every day is a different day with children. When I first had my child, I thought of every hour. I take it every hour of the day. And so, as you can imagine, there's just things that always come up, but we want to make sure that people have a place to go to, have a source to rely on. And Danielle and I want to be a part of that community for parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, you guys, part of parenting is my kids are running around. So if you hear them, I apologize.
Yeah.
That's their, they don't understand sometimes that it's time to relax. But I think that part of the main thing for me when I think about this course that we've created is the community part, which is what Cynthia mentioned. Especially right now. And we've done a few webinars, and we've been hosting other spaces where we're talking with parents, and that's what they're like, it's great. This is amazing information, amazing resources. And then they always come right to, and oh my goodness, it was so nice to hear this other parent and learn from them and grow together. So especially if you're in an area that is feeling even more isolated, it's just such a nice way to talk to other people. We were in that like Zoom fatigue kind of place, but people are now, they're like, hey, this is it. This is the way I think that we're going to be functioning and communicating. There's a nice ease as a parent of being able to take a course like this from your home, even when there's not a reason that you have to, like a pandemic, right? Because we don't have to worry about childcare. We don't have to worry about getting out the door and getting somewhere. So being able to do it online is really nice. But how when you're teaching mindfulness, Claudia, because you're a mindfulness instructor, just the idea of like pausing and being aware, that's something that as a parent can be even more of a challenge. So just really starting to focus not just on how you interact with your kids, but how do you interact with yourself? And that's really what helps us to be less reactive and more responsive. As parents. I mean, I'm not a perfect parent. I work with kids all the time. I meditate, I do yoga, exercise. Sometimes I'll still yell. Like sometimes it just happens. But when it happens, it's because I did not do all the things that I'm teaching people, so I had to pause and remind myself, okay, let me see what's going on. And that's something we talk about. And that's one thing I love about Cynthia and why I love working with her is that she's also really authentic and honest about, hey, we're not perfect. We're not trying to say we're perfect. We're trying to let you know that we have all this great experience in these tools, and we want to help people with knowing that everybody has things they struggle with, and how can we come together as a community and just be better,
Yeah. And I think that's so important to state because there's so much stigma around mindfulness, right? So it's just being better, being perfect, and it's not that because it's it's a journey that's from now until we're partied, and even in parenting, the same. It's all we're not perfect beings, and that is the point. As we make mistakes and we continue to learn, and in this space that you're both creating for parents is phenomenal. So that way I'm not a parent, and that's why I'm in love with this because personally I've decided not to have children, but I love children and they are the future. And if we're not investing in that, then what are we really doing as a community, right?
Yeah.
So it's just when you both reached out to me, I was like, absolutely 100%. How do we make this happen? Let's do this, right? So because we're the generation breaking those new boundaries and barriers, right? And so now our kids will be more into this because we're showing them this is the new normal. This is what we should be doing for ourselves in order to help others, including your children. So I love hearing everything that you both are saying. That's so, so important. I wanted to ask, what is one thing parents usually ask you both? Like, what can I do for this and this and that? Or what happens when this, like, what is the top one or two questions that you get asked the most?
Wow. I would say for me, and I think Danielle has older children, so her questions probably are a little bit tailored to the age group that her children are. For me, I do get a lot of tantrum questions for toddlers. And again, toddlers are like, they're a whole different species, but what the one question that we usually get or hear from is, how do you stop a tantrum? And it's actually a really loaded question because there isn't like a 1+2 formula to that. Right. It really matters. Has the child eaten something that day? Has the child, had something to drink? Has the child toy have been taken away? Are they in an environment where they're overly stimulated, or are they in an environment where they're understimulated? There's so many different elements that are occurring on the outside that we don't realize our children are absorbing, and they haven't yet understood where to categorize or where to put those motions or feelings that are attached to those experiences yet. And so the answer is usually, how do you get in front of the tantrum. And so one of the things that we talk about often is, of course, like I mentioned, kind of like the hierarchy of needs, like getting in front of some things before they happen, like before they're likely to get hungry, things like that. But also really communicating with them in advance of a particular moment that's about to happen. If we start to think about younger children and early childhood development, different transitions and moments of time can be very hard for them to digest. And so if as parents, we can prepare them and speak to them just like they're a partner or a friend or another relative, that, hey, in about 30 minutes, we're going to go do XYZ, and explain it to them that's appropriate for them to understand, in ways that they can connect with that information, is really helpful. And of course, we always say, safety is very important. So sometimes there could be a behavior that's exhibited where you have to remove the child, very quickly and safely, and all those things matter too. But for the most part, what we have found is that many children are just still struggling with the transition, the ends, the beginnings of different times. And so if we can sort of package those moments in time in a way that gives them, almost like when you're learning how to bowl for the first time, they give you those like bumpers in the alley. Give them a little bumper along the way, so they understand that there's a choice possibly involved that they can make a choice with, or choose an option. But they're your choices. They're still the parents' choices, but they're options that you would agree to, right? And so that just helps for toddlers in those phases as they learn independence and as they grow into understanding what their feelings are.
And that's what I really like about the mindfulness space, that you give them the freedom, right? Even though those are your choices, but they don't know because they're little children, right? But in their mind, they're like, oh, I get to choose, right? And that's so important to build within themselves, right? To have that kind of like, oh, apple or orange, which one do you want? And you're like, oh, I can choose. And it's really beautiful to watch and see. And something you touched up on is so crazy, that I worked in hospitality for my whole life, but what you do is manage expectations, and that's kind of what you're doing, right?
Exactly.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Danielle, what kind of questions do you usually get? What is your top question?
Similar, even though my kids are older, everybody wants to know how to de-escalate, right? So I talk a lot about the tools that we've been using since they were small, since they were, toddlers, are things that keep them calm. It's very hard to bring a kid down once they're up, but the mindfulness tools that we teach, the breathing and the meditation for kids, really help with keeping them calm and help them to also not respond, react to respond instead. But I think what you just said was really powerful, and I just wanted to just touch on that, because kids are just little people and they want to be seen and heard, and that's something we talk about a lot. Sometimes as parents, especially in our culture, it's very much like, we don't want to, you're meant to be, what was it when we were little, you're growing up, you're seen and not heard, come in, don't talk. It was just very like this, and no one ever asked what you felt, or how, it was not, I don't care how you feel, go do what I said, go do what I said. And that was just how we were raised. And it's no fault to our parents. I mean, that was just the norm then, but it doesn't create like this great relationship with your parents in adulthood. You think about now, like I have a sometimes strained relationship with my mom. We've worked through it. I know a lot of people who don't have really great feelings towards their parents because of things like that. But with kids, it's like they just want to be seen. They just want to be heard, just like we do. They just want you to acknowledge that. So when you do those choices, I used to do 2 fingers. I'd be like, pick a finger. Do you want this or do you want to do this? And like you said, the boundaries are there, but you're giving them the choice. It makes them feel seen and heard, and it gives them value. And that right there is huge. So I really love that you guys were talking about that. For older kids, I get a lot of questions of like, how do I get them to talk to me?
Right. Teenagers avoid it.
Like they just want to zip. And my daughter's 8, and then I have a 17-year-old stepson that I spend a lot of time with too. And we're heavily involved in his life. And I tell like parents, one thing I always ask both of my older kids when they come to me with a problem or they look upset is like, hey, share with me. And do you want me to fix it or just listen? Because a lot of times they just want you to listen. They don't want you to try and fix it and impose everything on it. But we also touch a lot on questioning. And it's very, very similar to how you probably learned when you were doing your yoga training, like empathetic listening and how to really hear people. Again, comes right back to being seen and heard. So how to really hear people and how to get to the root of what is going on. And Cynthia and I were working with a mom. I think the girl was middle to high school, but they had this huge argument. And we were like, listen, these are the questions we want you to ask her. Because I bet you it's not even about you. I bet you there's something else going on, but you need to really figure out what that is and just listen. And so she asked all the questions. And the next day she was like, you guys were right. It had nothing to do with me. She was upset about this whole other thing. And she's just so grateful. And it's sometimes hard for us to not impose our beliefs and our viewpoints. And that's a part of being a mindful parent, is acknowledging the fact that this person is not me. This is a whole nother human being with their own thoughts, their own personality. And my job is to teach them, to give them boundaries, and to support them and make them feel loved. Because that, and Cynthia is the expert in all that with the trauma, that attachment and all of it's huge. And without it, you and I are both saying we want to do all this mindfulness to create a better world, right? But we can get all the kids on board, just think what it'll be like in 20 years. I always say, no road rage. That's the goal.
It's true, because those are reactive things, right? Especially on the road, you're in your box and you feel like you're unstoppable, right? You can do and say whatever you want, but in reality, what's really going on underneath it all? So it's really beautiful. We have a comment here from Alexis. So true. Kids are little people with feelings, so important that we teach them and model to them how to process them. Yeah,
that's huge. I was going to say the key word in there was model for me. You're about to say that too, but yeah, modeling behavior, it's paramount in a lot of fields, especially in psychology, whether it's in a clinical setting. But certainly when you're talking about children learning from something, they got to learn from you all, and as long as they see mom, dad, parent, caregiver, whomever is in the home, do what it is that you're saying. That is the best method of educating a young person, is recognizing that, they're little people with big feelings sometimes. And, those feelings matter, and they certainly need to see from you how you digest those feelings. It's kind of like if you think about a argument with parents, or even with friends, you don't always see the makeup. You usually see the big outburst or the fight that happened, but you don't see what happened behind the scenes for it to happen, where the apology occurred or what was said to mend the relationship. And it's really important for children to see that, because what are they doing? They're just modeling the behavior.
Right, correct. I don't know if you both ever saw the show One Day at a Time with Rita Moreno. Have you caught that? That was really great. I was really impressed by the mindfulness that they were applying and the generational gap of normal behavior that was for Rita, then the daughter, and then her daughter, right? It was beautiful. And in our Latino space, and like the things that we do have, the walls between the generations, right? Why we can't connect. I thought that was an astounding way to show all the different topics and different opinions within the generations. Which brings me to a question. Would you both either consider, or have you had anyone come up to you and ask you, hey, how can I, as an adult, be either a better child or have a better relationship with my parent? Have you had any of that?
That's so funny, because Cynthia was like, we need to dig into this just last week. Just have you even had that conversation with your parent, right, as an adult? So it does come up, but mainly during our sessions where we're talking about like the ancestral things and how we can break the spanking and habit, and how we can break just the way we talk to our kids, or the the throwing of the shoe or whatever it is we're going to do.
Chanclet that time.
Yeah. Like, here we go. So that's when a lot of times that comes up, and that's our first session. And that's why we really kind of focus on, let's heal a little bit of maybe some of our feelings, and then think about how that impacts our relationship with our own children. So it's definitely when you become aware of these things, it's something that you start to worry about processing, and you're like, how can I sort through that?
Right, right. And I want to just point out, if any parents out there have any questions for Danielle or Cynthia, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the time right now that we have them. Um, but did you do in your workshops, are they different, a different theme that you're surrounding them by, or is it something that it goes by how many parents you're going, you're having subscribed? Are you is it a recurring workshop, or is it updated depending on what's going on? Um,
We keep like general themes and we give the general information, but of course, like, when you're going, we were in the thick of like the winter with the pandemic, it was a little more like,
right.
okay, the self-care became more important to discuss because again, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to be really reactive. You're not going to be able to parent in the best possible way, because you're like super stressed out. So that will change maybe the focus, it'll change the tools we'll give. But we find that when it comes to being mindful as parents, that there's really a general, whether can't talk today, general amount of information that needs to be given,
Right.
regardless, So we try to keep to that. And that's where the resources come in after as well,
Mm.
just for you to do on your own as well as with your kids.
Right.
But yeah, it adapts to the changing climate, changing things that are going on.
And do you have parents reach out after the workshop, like continued support, kind of?
Yeah, and we encourage them to connect with each other. So like that's really a big thing is not only should you be trying to connect with us, but you need to build community within yourself. Like for me, I was the first in my group of friends to have kids. That's why I have the
Mm.
older kids. And I really could have used other parents with kids my kids' age that we could have connected with, that I felt like we had something in common. It was very hard for me to connect with parents at my kids' schools because I was in a really like conservative areas of North Carolina. It was like super white, and I felt like it was very hard because we just didn't have any. I'm from New York. It was just like I'm loud, I'm this and that, and they were just. It was very different. So
Mhm.
if I had had something like this where I could have met people who were like-minded, so people who come to our sessions, they are like-minded. They know that they want to have a different approach to how they interact with their kids and how they interact with themselves. And it bleeds into all parts of their lives. It bleeds into how they interact with their partner. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about if your partner's not in this session with you, how can you guys work this into your life, not just with your kids, but with each other? Mindfulness is just such a great tool for everything. So they definitely stay in touch that way for sure.
I love that. That's wonderful. You are creating that community, and you, like you said, it's definitely going to bleed out way, way out. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy that, I think all three of us, we're creating new strides here in our community that's been in desperate need for quite a long time, because we're older, right?
Yeah.
And now we're doing this, and we've been needing this the whole time behind, our lives, and it's up to us, and we're realizing like, okay, let's make this happen. And I'm really so proud and happy for this workshop. It's so needed, and I can't push and stress enough. Tell, if you're not a parent, tell your friends that are parents, because it's only a positive outcome. It's just healing. All you're doing is just healing
Right.
yourself, the relationship with your children, and you're creating better beings for our community.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like Cynthia mentioned with the affordability, so I've noticed as when I'm working with schools that certain schools I was going to, I'd be like, who knows about yoga and mindfulness and this? And the kids would, and then certain schools I would go to, and one kid would raise their hand.
Mm.
And we really want to make sure that people from our own communities, and when we're, the impact and the feedback we're getting from Black and Brown parents and their kids has really been powerful. So while, of course, we interact with everybody from every background, the accessibility and the affordability has been really important to us. So keeping that and being able to find a way to make this accessible for pretty much anyone was really important for us as well, because we want to spread this to every single person we can, not just to people who have a ton of money and the resources to learn what some people call like, not necessary. Because a lot of these parenting courses that you get at the pricing that we're putting it at are just basics. Like, oh, here's how you cook and do the brush your teeth and make sure the kids, this is how much sleep they need. And while that information is super important, people who'd have a limited budget, and especially now during COVID,
right.
They should still have access to this same exact information that we're providing. So that was something that really went into our thought processes as well.
Yeah. Cynthia, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I cut something off.
Oh, you're fine. It was just to add on that, what we want to do is just create or keep planting seeds, like you mentioned, Claudia, is that we want to move our generation and the generation after us in a different direction. We know what better can look like. It's not perfect. It's what's better can look like. And we know that there's more choices that we have.
Right.
And previously we've been taught that there were only maybe like 2 or 3, right? And that now that we can keep planting these seeds, creating this ripple effect, that we can be transformative in the way in which we parent and the way in which we commune with each other. And that responsibility is also with parents. And so that's what we want to do is be a part of that ripple effect and continue the work.
Yeah, I love it. And we will. And we will be having these monthly webinars and discussing further. So as this community, as well as I'm, branching out and having more parents come in, and I'm sure we're going to have other set of questions, new people. So I'm excited for this adventure. And you both mentioned that it is an affordable workshop, and it really is. Everyone out there, I took a look, and collaborating with them, we're offering you a promo code. And Cynthia, if you can share the website and where they can find you to apply this code.
Yes, if you can go to mindfulparentingprogram.com, and you will find some buttons that say enroll now, and it will take you to the page where you can enter the promo code for Aki. And we will be happy and looking forward to seeing you all on March the 7th.
Fantastic. And where can people find you outside from the website?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm Cynthia_TCC, or at Trauma Conflict Consulting. And Danielle, do you want to give out your hand?
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Instagram as well at Yo Soy Yella. So I am, and then Yella, YELLA. Definitely. And do use the code, because we really want to know if you guys found out about the course from this session. So that way we can kind of see where people are coming from as well. So.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I'm really happy this happened, and thank you so much, both of you, for reaching out. And we're going to keep working together to create a better future for our community and bleed out to other communities. So I truly thank you both. And I always like to remind everyone that the breath is the secret, and always lead with love. So thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate your time, your presence, and all this beautiful information and the mindfulness space that we are just growing. I'm really excited. This is beautiful. We're making new roads and new ways of living that has been in need, and I know people are going to really receive it well. So
thank you for having us.
For helping us. Yeah, we appreciate you helping us get the word out to encourage people to be mindful.
Priscilla, I love that you asked them why when they came with them. Thank you, Priscilla. I mean, I know it's important. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.
Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.